Today on Talking Sense, we're going to go over some tips for new investors to help you supercharge your savings or have what I would consider maybe a little faster journey, a little better journey. I've brought Chad Roller with me today. He is my partner out in Conway. So thank you for coming and doing this with me today, Chad. We've spent a good amount of time over the years meeting with people who are just getting started, and there's a lot of questions, a lot of often misunderstandings about how investing works best. So we thought it'd be good to we're going to give you 12 tips, so buckle up. We've got 15 minutes to get through 12 topics.
We'll go fast. So number one, know your risk tolerance and time horizon.
Yes, I think let's clarify what that means, though, because those are jargon words. So let's do that first.
So risk tolerance is how much is the volatility, the ups and downs of the market, the ups and downs of my account value. If I put in $100 and all of a sudden I see my account go to $75 or $80, what is my tolerance for that volatility? So can I tolerate the ups and downs, the ebb and flows of the market and the pricing of the value of my account, right? And then also time horizon. What is my time horizon? Is that money something that I may need in the next 12 months? Or is it something that, no, this is long-term retirement money that I'm putting back for my retirement?
And I think sometimes people will say, well, they're younger, so they definitely could take a lot more risk, which technically is true. But if you can't tolerate it, if you're going to panic and get out of the market because you see that balance dropping, then it may be better to take a more moderate approach if you can't just stay the course in that. The other thing that we think everybody needs to consider, number 2, is have an emergency fund. The last thing you need to do when you start investing is take money back out, especially if you're using retirement accounts. If you take money back out, you're going to be penalized most likely on it, certainly taxed on it, depending on the circumstances. So it's best to have an emergency fund that protects you from having to touch that money. I'll tell people all the time, make sure that money's dead to you.
Right. So investments for investments and emergencies for emergencies. So the next time maybe, life happens, the refrigerator goes out, need new tires on the car, those type of things. We don't have to dip into those investments because when you purchase something, that upfront cost to make a purchase in an investment, there's a cost to that, right?
Yes.
So you have to recoup those costs as time goes on throughout the increase in value of that investment. So you don't want to purchase something and then have an and all of a sudden I've got to go in there and sell that now because I had an emergency.
So the better place for your emergency fund is a money market account, a high yield savings, something along those lines that has liquidity, the ability to go and get it back out without penalty. The next step, number 3, is to set realistic expectations. It is easy to expect double-digit returns every year and then be let down when there's a down year and lose your motivation. So you want to make sure that you're not planning around having a fixed up, constantly winning type of portfolio and that you have appropriate expectations for your allocation.
Yeah, because when you start looking at investments, whether it be in your 401k or if you look online and you look, you're going to see a lot of times average returns, right? This portfolio has averaged a rate of return over the last 10 years. Well, that's an average. So it may not be what it's done over the last 12 months. So we've had really good returns over the last, 24 months in the market, being that, now we're in 2025 here. We've had a really good return. So a lot of funds have very positive returns over the last 2 years. But the average may be very different than what the return has been over the last 2 years. So when you look at I started investing in this fund and maybe, you get 6 months to 12 months into the time that you've been investing in this particular investment, and all of a sudden you're negative and you're like, well, this thing's done, 20% last year. Well, no, that's what last year. So looking at the average return and setting the expectations and realizing that that's an average versus, what it's just done in the last 12 months, you got to make sure that you're setting those realistic expectations.
And even in a growth portfolio, the average over the long haul is somewhere between 7 to 10%. If you look at general averages when you do research. So trying to plan around a higher percentage of growth, especially if you're not really true pure growth, is probably going to leave you feeling like you've missed out on something. So do some research, understanding that past performance doesn't tell you what it'll do in the future, and make sure that you, next kind of tip, don't try to time the market. Don't go into investing trying to find the perfect time to put your money in, because it just doesn't exist.
Yeah, and we see this a lot with beginning investors. Is this a good time to start? And what always it's, are you ready to start, right? Have you established those baby steps in order to get started and make sure this is money that you need to start investing? So we see that in that lack of, well, do I get in right now or do I wait till later? No, if that's long-term money and you've designated those to be long-term investments, you've got to get in, because timing the market is very, very difficult.
And the best thing to do, really, instead of timing the market, is just be consistent.
Exactly.
Pick a dollar amount that you can go without every month and make sure you're putting that into the market consistently. Don't worry about what the market is doing day to day, and just keep it going. And the best thing you can do to be able to stay in it and not panic is to diversify.
Yeah. So number 5, diversify or spread the risk. So basically, diversification in investing means that we are going to spread our investments out over many sectors within the market. So a lot of times, if you're buying individual stocks or if you're buying ETFs or you're buying mutual funds, those are going to have an objective, right? Whether it be growth. And then even some of those ETFs and some of those portfolios can be narrowed down to a certain sector within the market.
Right.
So you may see a technology sector. So you may, if you're in technology, know that that's going to be very volatile compared to an industrial sector. So diversification among different sectors of the market gives you the ability to make sure that you are reaching all the highs and lows and the periodic times throughout the economy, that the ebbs and flows that we go through.
And it doesn't necessarily require great lengths to become diversified. Most mutual funds have some level of diversification built into them. Managed portfolios should have some level of diversification. And even in your employer plan, you might have some sort of target date funds that create diversification for you without you having to pick individual things to cover all of those bases. So just recapping our first 5, know your risk tolerance and time horizon, have an emergency fund, set realistic expectations, don't try to time the market, and then make sure you diversify to spread out your risk. Not that you can avoid it all, but you can certainly set yourself up to have less. The next thing we want to talk to you about is watching out for fees. And I want to be really careful on this, because a fee is not necessarily a bad thing if you're getting the value for that. But unnecessary fees or a lack of awareness of your fees could be a problem.
Right. And so depending on what type of account you start with, whether it be a brokerage account or an advisory account, so anytime you do anything, it's going to have fees, right? Nothing's free. So you're going to have fees in investing. And sometimes when there are platforms that maybe, associate no fees to them, there are some type of fees or expense fees or something built into the products or the securities that you're purchasing. So the fees are there, but you've got to watch out for them, because if you're going to use an account and actively trade that account and you're paying for upfront fees, then you may be better suited in a management fee scenario. So it depends on how active you are in the account and what your goal is for the account. So as a beginning investor, if you're going in there and making a lot of trades and making a lot of changes up front, you may be assuming a lot more fees than you realize by just being very active in those accounts getting started.
And I think the best thing is to understand your fees. Understand what you're paying for and what that looks like and how it's affecting your overall performance. And then if it's not in alignment with what you feel like you need, get with somebody that can help you with that. The next one is to stick to your plan. Number 7, stick to your plan and don't panic. Now, this assumes that you have a plan. So let's start there. If you don't have a plan, create a plan. But don't panic. Market ups and downs are inevitable. And it is common for new investors to react emotionally. So, I've heard people say, oh, my 401k is a 201k now. And I had a client tell me that one time, and I said, well, okay, have you lost any shares? Did your share count change? Well, no, it actually went up because we've added funds. Okay, that's okay then. Nobody stole your money. Your investments aren't valued the same today, but it usually will correct itself over time. I can't guarantee it will because, regulations and such, but you've got to just stay the course. If you panic and sell and then the market recovers and you buy back in, then you've lost money and then you've bought while it was up. That's really detrimental to your future health.
Yeah, you got to stay in the game in order to win. So you've got to take you got to take on the risk of investing. Obviously, we're going to put your money towards a company or a product that is there to make you more money. So there are risks associated with all types of investing. So therefore, you have to understand that those risks are going to come along, and there's going to be ebb and flows throughout the market. So you've got to make sure, in order to don't panic, keep on dollar cost averaging into it, keep your monthly contributions flowing, and then that way, in the long term, that is the consistency that's going to give you the ability to win on the long term.
This next one, number 8, is avoid following the hype. There are a lot of finfluencers, that's what it is, finfluencers, financial influencers out there that will give these, really interesting, catchy videos about how you can become a millionaire in 6 months or less, or different trends that you will see. The problem is many of these people are not financial advisors. They don't have licensing. They don't have the bandwidth to help you understand what you specifically need. I can't give general advice that would work necessarily for you every time, even on this show. I have to talk generally because I'm not talking to an individual, and I have the licensing and training. So when you have somebody doing something that's not in your stage of life or in your circumstances, you're not going to get the same results. So just get consistent and follow basic common sense principles instead of trying to keep up with the Joneses when it comes to financial trends.
Yeah, and the other thing you want to do is number 9, be smart on taxes. So understanding that anytime you make money, there are taxes owed, right?
Yes.
And that's just like when we earn money and we make money, whether any type of investment out there, typically you're gonna be taxed on those gains. So understanding those taxes, and also when you're making those trades, the different types of accounts you're using, helping you understand those taxes and penalties if you withdraw those funds from a qualified retirement account, that can also be very detrimental to your overall returns.
Yes. And the next one is regularly rebalance your portfolio. Now, we said earlier about not making changes trying to time the market. However, it does make sense over time to look at your portfolio and rebalance when it makes sense. That's not saying you sell out of panic or you sell when the market's down, but if you've got a large gain in something, it does sometimes make sense to shift that. Or if one part of your portfolio has done really well, it could very much be out of balance with where your overall diversification needs to sit. That's what we're talking about, not selling and buying out of panic or excitement.
Yeah, and we'll see that a lot of time with those different sectors that we talked about earlier. Maybe the technology sector has had a really good run, and so you're getting maybe overweight in that particular investment in that sector of the market, where you need to rebalance and keep that diversification, that objective of maybe just a growth of income or growth portfolio. So that's what we're talking about as far as rebalancing, making sure you're not overweighted in a particular sector of the market.
Yes. So that's our top 10. We've got 2 more. Keep learning, and then ask for help when you need it. Keep learning. I mean, that's something that we do personally. We have a culture of education here, but also there are so many resources that you don't know where they come from. You don't know if they're the right ones. So I understand how it can be overwhelming to find the resources that you need sometimes. But I'm going to give a shameless plug here. If you go to getreadyforthefuture.com, our website here at GenWealth, there are tons of free resources. We've got this podcast that you can follow. We've got things you can get on our website and just download, like a budgeting spreadsheet, different things that you can do there. We've got the Fastest 4 that we send out every week that gives you just a high-level understanding of what's going on in the market. And then we have free events and webinars all throughout the year through GenWealth Academy. So if you don't know what you can trust, check us out. We're probably going to have something that can help you along your journey.
Yeah, and that leads us to number 12, ask for help, right? And we offer free consultations. For the very first time, beginning investors can come in and sit down and be educated by an advisor to help them kind of get that jump start and give them that education they need, because there's a lot of different places you could start, right? And a lot of times all of this becomes very overwhelming because you're fearful of doing the wrong thing.
Yes.
And a lot of times you just need maybe 1 or 2 things to get you started in order to start that journey.
Yes. So it's time for our 2 cents. We got through it, but we've got to give our 2 cents before we go through. What do you think?
Well, as a beginner, everyone starts somewhere, right? And I think that's where getting started is the number 1 key. Don't delay it. You got to get started.
And if you'd like a little checklist of some things that maybe could help you focus your learning, we have a free download. It's called 6 Keys to Unlocking Financial Independence. You can text the word keys to 501-381-5228, or you can visit getreadyforthefuture.com/keys to access that free download. Thank you guys for joining us on Talking Sense today. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes too. Thanks for listening to Talking Sense. And if you like what you hear, make sure and subscribe to the podcast to get all the newest episodes. The Jim Wealth team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or by calling our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. And while we like to have fun here, we're also financial advisors, and that means disclosures. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and Jim Wealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.